Okay, so what we're going to do now is run through the process of processing an application in MetaStreet. So we know we access MetaStreet via the domain or instance you've been provided with. Go to login, log in with your email address and your password. For the admin users at this point, you would be asked to do your two-factor authentication, but I've turned it off because we're in our demo site at the moment. Okay, so there's lots of functionality here. We're not going to look at any of this apart from property licensing. Property licensing is like the main workshop in MetaStreet, and that's where we do make all the licenses and also manage the licenses and take care of the sort of day-to-day work. So this is our main dashboard for all of the applications that are coming into the system via the front-end form. And so this is the admin view again. So depending on your role, it might be slightly different. But here we can see we've got the team. So these are all the council users, and then the work that has been allocated. So we've got 55 applications or licenses that have been allocated to Russell Moffat, but we can move work between different users, council users, simply by either clicking the side, the applications that you would like to move. So we've got one here, it's a brand new application in. So in this case, I'm going to give this to Russell to do. So just scroll down, find him here, and then just by selecting him, it automatically now allocates that work to Russell. So I think of each of the applications as being a sort of on a production line. The very beginning of the production line is a new application, and the very sort of the end of the main production line is issuing that final license. We're going to try and cover the process from new application through to issuing a draft license, because that's probably about 80% of the licensing process. We're able to search for properties. This is a fuzzy search. It works like a sort of Google search. So if we wanted to find, for example, we could search by interested party. So if I wanted to see all applications by the dodgy landlord named Moffat, we can do that, and it will bring up everything that's linked to Moffat. Or we can search by, say, estate, interested in, and it will bring up all the addresses. So it's a search that sort of has a good look through all the applications, looking mostly at addresses and the interested parties. So that's quite helpful. And then if you want, if you can see here, we've got a filter on now because we've got some text in this search field. To clear the filter, we just hit this link here, and it will go back to the beginning. We can also filter by license type. So we've got all the different license types, including temporary exemption. So that's not a license, obviously, but it is an application process. So we could just look at selectives, or we could just look at mandatories. And then we can clear the filter by just going to that link there. We can search by status. So think of this as a point on that production line. So a bit like a sausage machine where application comes in new and works all the way through the process. Sometimes it deviates to deal with certain things, right through to issuing a draft license. So draft licenses are around here, there. And then we've got the whole process from once a license has been issued, all the management of the license through its life, right through to revocation or renewal letters. And then we've also got a final mini production line for TENs, temporary exemption notices, which go through a process, an application, and a process for issuing that. So again, if we did select one of these, we just want to have a look at new ones. We haven't got any because I've already allocated it myself. But we can do that, and then we can hit the reset. We can also search by officer, so who's been allocated the work, and then we can search oldest and newest. So if you're It's obviously handy to have it on the newer stuff, but sometimes if you're clearing a backlog, you can flip it around and start on the old stuff first. So this is the application. You can see I've just put this through this morning, and you can see you can see what the address is for. Flat 1, Arrow House. Of course, these are all dummy addresses, so ignore that part. But you can see who it's submitted by and when. So it's going to be a bit confusing because I'm Russell Moffat going to be Russell Moffat, the applicant, and Russell Moffat, the landlord, or the the council officer. And then we can see what license the system has selected or recommended, and I'll show you how we can adjust that if necessary. And then we've got 2 more flags. Think of them as a bit like post-it notes, just to help give you a sense about where it is in the process. So we can see we have allocated this case. We've already done that process. We've seen that. You can see that we've got checks in progress. So the application now is being checked, and it's in the application stage. So the application stage is the point where it's received by the council, right through to the point where you issue the license. Then it moves to license stage. Surprise. So we're just going to, each of these properties, we can dive into them and have a closer look by just clicking on this link here. Before I do, just one last thing. If you want to export into an Excel file, then we can do that through this export button. So if you wanted to look at them all on a spreadsheet for whatever reason, you can do that. But every property we're able to access via this link, and that takes us into each application has its own dashboard. And here's the dashboard for the application for Flat 1 Arrow House. Now we're just going to go across the top. This is the sort of quick reference ribbon here. So the reference number, every application has its own unique reference number. So if we got another application, a renewal, or a subsequent application for Flat 1 Arrow House, we would have a different reference number. However, the UPRN is always going to be the same because that links directly to the address. UPRN is just a digital way or numbered way of describing an address. We have the application type, so we'll cover this in a bit more detail. This is the application, the license type within the Housing Act that the system has determined, based on the information provided by the applicant, that what license we should be processing. But we can overwrite that if for whatever reason it's not right. We can see the application date, and of course once we've issued the license, we'll have start and end dates for that license too. So again, I've got admin view here, so it's important that probably everyone understands this is all the functionality, because there may be cases where little errors are made and we need to go back a stage and reset things. The way that we can do that. So each application has its own settings. Within settings, we have the Armageddon button, which is to reset the whole property. Then we've got, so I'll do it slightly in non-logical order, we've got change property address. So this is for where an application has been made against the wrong address. So an application comes in for Flat 1, but the application should be against Flat 13. Well, these things happen. It's frustrating. But we can go through the change address process here. We put in the postcode of the property that we would like the application to apply against, and then we can override that. Again, this is the setting for the admin users. I expect you'll use it once or twice, but it will really help. It will not work if there's another application against the property that you want to change to, for obvious reasons. We can change the license type. So I've made reference to this already. The system's determined that we should be looking to issue a selective license. It's just an algorithm. It's artificial intelligence that's doing that bit of work for you. But it could, if the information is wrong, then the license type could be wrong. So if you needed to move this to just select that, change license type, and that means from now on we'll be making a mandatory license. But we don't need to do that for this one. And then finally, we've got a license status change. So this, haven't got any functionality here you can see at the moment, but this is a way of manually moving a license back a stage or two. So if a draft license has been issued and there's an error, whatever that might be, we can reset and go back to edit the draft license. And so that might be helpful. So, these things that happen early on. So this is how we can do that. Again, this is going to be for admin users. Okay, there are all the settings. So we can either go back, because it's completely web-based, it's in the cloud. We can either use the back button or to move backwards, or we can just use these links here to move back. So we only want to go back to the main settings for our house. So I tend to use this, but we can use the back button if we wanted. Entirely up to you. So we've done settings. So I'll do these in slightly reverse order. Inspections, I'm not going to spend any time on that in this session. We'll do this, but this is where all the inspection records will be kept and updated, and we'll cover that in another session. Okay, so now we're going to get into payment, all important. So we are expecting 2 payments. One payment is the part A, and that's for the processing of the application. And you have a second payment that we take at the point where we're ready to issue, or we have issued the draft license. So we can see part A is being paid, and we get the exact time, date, by who, what for, and a unique reference. That unique reference follows that payment. Make sure that we can always join it back together. We also get a clear signal here that money's been received. And the reason we're able to do that is because the payment platform talks to MetaStreet and says, yep, we've collected £680 from Russell Moffat's account by card payment. That money is yours now. So we get that signal. And then you can also dive into that payment and see it in more detail. This time we get a transaction ID. So we've got 2 IDs. This helps us track the payment if there's ever a problem. And all important, if we need to issue a refund, again, this is a high level setting, we can do that directly from the system. So if that's 680, maybe the application was made in error, didn't need to be made, we can issue a refund, either partial or full. So if we wanted to enter only 600 or only £80 of it, we can add 80. We'll get, you can put a reason for it, whatever that might be. Then we'll get the final review page, which will allow you to edit if you want. And then as soon as you hit this refund this payment, that's going to tell the payment platform to send the amount of money that you asked for back to the customer, and it will happen pretty quickly. Sometimes it takes a little while to land in the customer's account because it has to go back through bank clearing. But in terms of, you can be confident that you've done that money's on its way. So you may have a few of those early on. I'm thinking particularly if applicants try and license property that's outside of a scheme, or maybe it's not clear if it's in the scheme or not, that refund button will become really important. Okay, so that's the fees. So when I didn't really look at the Part B payment, but you can see that's pending. So that's money that's due to be collected, and we'll collect that at a later time. But it just shows you that we have that ability to collect that money in the future. Okay, so that's payment. Right, we'll go to property details. So think of property details as a digital version of the application form that you're able to edit. So we've got all the interested parties information, and so we've set the systems. We've selected the license holder. If you want to edit anything about this, we can go in and change that. So if we want to move the license holder from Russell to the mortgage provider, not advisable, but if there was another more appropriate person, we could do that. If you wanted to change the person who collects the rent, that's one of the key questions and links to section 263 of the house. So if we need to change the porter holder, we can do that. So if we wanted to move it to someone else, and we didn't want to collect the Part B from the original porter holder, we can do that here. And then we've got a list of all the interested parties. So when you go through the application process, all of the interested parties should be added. You can see here I added myself and the bank. And if we want to change those, so we want to change Russell Moffat's details, we can dive in. All of that information here you can see is editable. There's also a cautionary contact flag here. So if Russell Moffat is a very challenging, threatening individual, and you need to make everyone aware of that, you can go in and click yes, provide information about what happened. It might be inspection, it might be, whatever your justification for adding them effectively to the cautionary contact, you can do that, and that will then appear as a flag on the system so everyone knows. You can see we've got details in terms of we can change here too, and we can just add notes generally. So we can put just any notes you wanted to add, then those notes go into the system, and I'll show you how that's managed. So that's interested parties. There's lots of functionality there, including some information about eligibility information, and also we can archive interested parties. So if an interested party has been declared, but actually your review of the application means that actually then they're not really an interested party and they should be excluded, they can be put into the archive. So that's all the people data related to the application. This is all the property data related, and we'll dive into that in a second, but I'm just going to cover this off first. So based on the information provided in the application, the rooms, the occupants, the amenities and facilities, the system will make a judgment about what the maximum permitted number of persons for the house should be, and what the number of households should be. So this one, because it's selective, we've got one household, and based on the information provided here, you can see that we've got 2 double rooms. We have the maximum is going to be 4 adults. If for whatever reason you want to override that, if it's a larger HMO, it could be many bedrooms, could be much more complex in terms of calculating space standards, you can manually override this recommendation. So we can go in and we can change for each of the rooms. There's bedroom 1, there's the living room, and then the overall judgment, you can edit this. There's also an ability for those box rooms to use the children under 10, so we can specify just a child to go in to a room that's less than 6.53, I think. So okay, that's part, and then within this part we've got, it's broken down further into property details. So we've got all the information that's provided about in the application form. So you can see, actually I tried to kid the system, try and convince the system it was a HMO, but actually determine it correctly that it was a selective license. So just be aware that it's not what the landlord tells you what the license should be. It's based on the information that's provided by the landlord about who's occupying the property and the details, room and facilities, amenities in the property. So we've got those questions here in terms of number of people, number of households. Again, I tried to convince the system it's HMO, but it's not a HMO based on the information provided. So if there's any confusion, you may have a loud say, oh, I see it was this, but it's actually going to be, it's 99% of the chance it's going to be that this information around households is not correct. So there's information about stories, just to make sure that this is required by the Housing Act or the regulations, and it helps us make a judgment practitioner in terms of risk. How many separate lettings? So really we're looking at separate rooms, or is it as a single AST, assured short-hold tenancy? Then we've got how many habitable rooms, year, and there has any external structures, outbuildings, sheds, etc. Then we've got the individual room details. So we can change all of this. Is effectively the application form that's been completed, provided to you in terms of what the answers were. We have the ability to change any of those answers. If we change room sizes, amenities, the system, and the license hasn't yet been issued, it will update the maximum permitted households and maximum permitted number. You can see we can pretty much completely re-edit the application. We can delete a room, add a room, change the location. change the shared exclusive status. So just to make you aware, sometimes this does, even though we've got a fairly concise, to the point hint about the difference between shared and exclusive, sometimes this is misunderstood by landlords. Simply, is one household sharing a kitchen, it's exclusive. If we've got two households, which could be two individual, it could be two families, two individuals, then we're into shared status.
Shared, yeah.
So sometimes watch out for that. Sometimes properties come through as selectives when they should have been HMOs because the applicant hasn't read this part properly. Okay, and then we've got kitchen. Everything can be changed here. So think of that as a fully editable form that's come through.
Okay.
We've got the health and safety information, which is just a yes/no type scenario, and how the applicants responded to those. That can be edited if you need to. And then finally, we've got the declaration, which just shows that they ticked the boxes on the declaration to confirm that that's done. So that's the property details. Documents. So documents is a store of everything that the system creates in terms of documents. So it's make a draft license, final license. There's going to be emails sent. There's it could be a temporary exemption notice. Lots of things that the system creates. That's automatically stored here. It could be information that the applicant has provided, which can be, you get the safety certificates that you asked for, follow-up documents that you might have asked for, and it can also include information that officers load into the system. So you can see here we've got the electrical safety cert that I've added, the gas safety cert. I've added those this morning when I completed the application.
Okay.
Then we've got an original copy, a true copy of the application, as if it had been all nicely typed up and submitted to you, held in perpetuity. So that's kept as a PDF. All the information provided by the landlord before maybe some edits started is here. So this is like an original unedited version of the application.
Okay.
And then you can see here we've also got a copy of an email that's been sent to me confirming that I have submitted my application. So I have the ability to archive information. So if I didn't want, for whatever reason, I didn't want to save that information, we can move that to the archive, and then we can set up processes to delete that. So think about putting that in the bin, and then after a certain amount of time, based on your own sort of data retention policies, we'll start wiping anything that's in the archive. If you put it in the archive by accident, you don't want it in the archive, you can either remove it completely and delete it forever, or you can restore it. So here is tasks. Tasks is where all the processing is done, and think of it as if a file, and we've got certain things that we need to go through in terms of that checklist. That's where the work is. This is sort of the overview, but tasks is where we do the actual processing. Okay, so allow me to explain this. So we have you can see here we've got 7 outstanding tasks, and we've got 7 completed tasks. So the 14 tasks that this particular application has needs before we can issue that draft license, half of them have been done for you. So the system has done 7 checks that you would have to do on a normal license yourself, but the system's done that in advance of you opening up the application. So in this case, you can see here the property doesn't need a further declaration, and declarations is for where the proposed license holder is not the owner. So we're just getting approval from the owner that the managing agent or this other person should be the license holder, making sure that that's aligned. That the amenities, the information about the amenities in terms of the numbers of amenities, that they exist. So they confirm there is a bathroom and it does have a toilet. It doesn't say that property is perfect by any means, just that based on the application it meets the basic standards to allow you to process the application. However, if you wanted to have a look, you could still go into the actual task, and you can see the information that's been provided. We can edit that directly if you wanted to. If we wanted to make a note about amenities, whatever it might be, we can add that. Fine, or I've been to, whatever it might be, spoke to the landlord, could be anything. We can add a note. You can add as many notes as you like, and they will appear here. They will also appear in the audit trail. You can see it's already saved as no concerns, so we don't really need to change that. So we've got a whole bunch of tasks here that the system has done for you. You can still go into those and review those if you would like to. However, the system has identified 7 tasks that absolutely need your intervention as the processing officer. And so we'll just go through those now. I just want to highlight we've got this these little symbols here that help to risk rate the application. So you can see here, particularly, we've got an exclamation mark with an unsatisfactory. So the system is telling you that the information about the fit and proper checks is unsatisfactory. And I'll show you why that is, because I purposely added information on fit and proper to, that shouldn't be approved, is of concern. And you can see I did the same for financial arrangements. For the others, we've just got the black circle with the exclamation mark, and that just is more of a way of saying you still need to have a look, and it needs to be checked. It won't allow it to be progressed. So we're just, all of these top 7 have to be dealt with, reviewed by a human. These 7 tasks here have been reviewed by the smart algorithm and determined that they are satisfactory, but you can still go back into them and edit them if you would like. So let's just dive into this one. This is the address format. Are we happy with the way that the address has been laid out? This is something that the system, this is something for a human to do. And then we can just mark that from needs to be checked to satisfied, no concerns. As soon as we hit save status, you can see it drops into the completed pile. So think about it having one side of tasks on your side of desk, and effectively in a digital way, you're moving them to the completed pile. The next one we've got to do is the fit and proper. So you can see here, so this is down as unsatisfactory. And then if we have a look why, you can see that under the convictions, the answer yes, and then some information has been provided. That's the fit and proper check working. Now, it might be the case that you speak to the applicant and it's a spent conviction, or it's not relevant, or it was by mistake. You can add a note and it will drop in as your note. See the system validation come up. This is the algorithm that's working, and it's left a note for you after it's done its calculations. And you can see here it's dropped in that we have unspent convictions based on this information here. So it's telling you in fairly plain English what the problem is, so you can then do something about it. Just here we can also see that we've got, which may be helpful for you guys, we've got a API that's linked directly to the Rogue Landlord database, which is the GLA Rogue Landlord database. There's an API, so you could check for my name, or okay, so let's say we're happy with that for whatever reason. Let's say we're satisfied with conditions as opposed to satisfied with no concern. We save the status, and you can see it drops into the completed file. So we just go through this process now. You can see it's the system validation. Again, we can read that to understand what the problem is. Okay, I've answered there's no funds. Again, we might want to talk to the landlord, say that's not appropriate. Landlord confirms that he does have funds. And now we've moved that into the completed pile. Some of these might be complete blockers and might result in leaving them as unsatisfactory. If they're unsatisfactory, just complete the other tasks, and that application will then go down the route of a refusal notice, which we're going to follow the happier path to making a license, but there is a digital path to refuse license. So if you hit something that's unsatisfactory, leave it as unsatisfactory, move it into the task below, it doesn't matter, it still processes, go through the other tasks, and then it will give you an option to progress that, to refuse the license, and then to issue the refusal notice. So land registry search, recommend this, just to make sure that we're dealing with the correct freeholder, leaseholder, just satisfied, no concerns, move on. Council tax, same process, recommend looking up the council tax, making sure that the liable party, the responsible party, at least bear some resemblance to the application. This is really helpful to prevent rent-to-rent type scams. So we're just, if you want to upload a copy, PDF copy of what you're finding, do it through the choose file, load it in, and you've at least got that audit trail then. Enforcement history, so checking your own files to see if there's been notices served or any other offences committed. If there is, of course, it'd be helpful to load in that information into the system so you can have that on record. No concerns on this occasion. Might put a note, checked, zero card checked, add a note. You can see we've got that information. And then finally, we need just to review the uploaded documents. So you can see here's the electrical cert, here's my gas safe. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, that looks fine. Gas cert, okay. Happy with that, whatever reason. If you're not happy, you can send an email to the applicant asking for another copy. If it's a really bad copy, if it's out of date, if there's a problem, then we just select the thing we're not, the documents being uploaded that you're not happy about, and you're able to then send directly. The system will automatically send an email off to the applicant asking for another copy. So, or if there's no copy at all, say for example electrical certificate is not provided, hit the electrical button, send that email, and that will send off and say you need to provide a copy of electrical certificate. So we'll say satisfy no concerns. We'll add that note. Add something here. Right. So now we've completed all those 14 tasks. So that all of that work's been done. At which point we will be asked to make a decision about what we want to do with that license. So we can do that. We can go to the decision module. So each license application has its own decision record. If in doubt, always go for the green button. All the positive let's do something buttons are green. So we can only make a determination on this license application because that's all we can do at this point. We have three choices. We choose to grant the license, or refuse the license, or withdraw the license. So sometimes by mutual agreement, the landlord and the council agree that the license should be withdrawn for whatever reason. Mostly it's going to be grant, and then some refuse. So let's go down the grant the license route. Okay, we choose the date at which we want the valid from date on the license. So let's just put, you can pretty much have any date. So we've got date of application, date letters will be sent, or another date. The length of the license, 5 years, 1 year shortcuts, or another date. So if you've got another a period between 5 years and 1 day that's not 1 year, then the vast majority will go out as 5 years. Maybe you need quite good justification not to issue a 5 years. That's how the sort of regulations and sort of not case law, but definitely guidance out of the tribunal has formed in recent years. Now here, if we were going to say a 1 year license, we would need to provide detailed justification about why, or a shorter license, why that is. Because this is a 5 year full-time license, we don't need to, but just note that this is optional. But sometimes for the shorter licensing, you're going to need to add something here, and it will appear on the license, so it needs to be accurate. So if you've got non-standard license condition. You can see that I've got a couple of silly dummy ones in the side, so we'll add that one, whatever that is. If there's any that you've, this is more for the Part 2 licenses, the mandatory licensing. If you'd like to add a bespoke license condition, maybe related to disrepair, we can do that. We can add that now. So whatever the text is, this is going to go on as an additional license condition. So the English needs to be good, needs to be accurate, punctuation, grammar. And you can see here, we can remove that, change my mind, I don't want to add that. If the person processing wants someone else to approve the license, particularly if it's a shorter license, and want someone to review that, we can go through we can allocate it to someone else. We won't on this occasion. We get to review our decision just before we make it, then we make the decision. Okay. And you can see get finalized. Now, if for whatever reason you made an error and you want to go back in and reopen that license condition, that license decision, then we can do that. Do that here. We don't need to do that, so we can just go back to again using these pathway links here. Quite helpful. We can see that that's being made. Now we can go back to the actual app, go back into the property dashboard, and you can see, oh, we've got another task. Every time the system creates another task, think about it moving along that production line, and these little tasks here pop up when it's ready to move to the next stage. And you can see here, this is the collection because we're ready to issue the draft license. We can process the Part B. So this is just a matter of hitting a button. So it's going to reach out to the applicant's card and take that Part B payment, which is going to do. This is actually a test account with the key set up. So this is it's actually gone through the process. That's how long you would expect to wait. We get another transaction ID because it's the second transaction. We can see what's been paid, for what, when, and by whom. If it fails, you will get a warning to say that the transaction has failed. For example, if the payment card has expired or something like that, you'll get that. In that case, you will need to then contact the landlord or ask them for some additional money, so we can use the request the payment process for that. So now we've done all our checks, taken all the money, so we're ready to issue the final license, the draft license. So we've got a covering letter that's going to be produced as part of that draft license, notice of intention, whatever your language you choose to use. We'll put today's date in, but it could be that maybe all your licenses are going to go out tomorrow. So that's fine, we can put tomorrow's date in. We set that date. And now we've got the option to email the applicant to tell them they can now log back into the portal and get a copy of their draft license, which I recommend. As an applicant, I would like to be able to do that. You can also send a copy of the license to be issued by your print room. So this, in the period of lockdowns and COVID and everything else, this might be helpful. You've got a lot of home working. You're not going to have a big print. You may have a printer at home, but you don't necessarily want to. Not designed to do hundreds and hundreds of license applications that are going to be numerous pages long. And then, of course, there's the folding, enveloping, posting. So some councils are just directly sending a copy of the license, covering letter right through to the post room, and they're out and letting that work be done elsewhere. So if you've got a print service set up, we just click here to say, yes, we do want it to go to the print room. It's demo, so we don't. So that's worth bearing in mind. So once we've got to the bottom, remember to hit the create button. So we've done these two options, create the letters, and by magic, the system has made 2 draft licenses, one for the applicant, freeholder, license holder, and one for the other interested party, because they also need to receive a draft license as part of the requirements of the Housing Act. So we can dive in here and we can see a copy of that license. So this is not going to be, it's not set up as yours are. Yours are all done by templates. So you can see it's got all the information, and it pulls through all of the processing that you've done, all the dates based on the templates that you've created. All of this is completely editable within MetaStreet settings, and pulls through the maximum permitted household, maximum permitted number. But if you need to regenerate the letters, hit the regen button, and that will refresh the letters, and anything you've created in the system, it will then get some plowed into those templates. So it's a way of refreshing these if they're not quite aligned with any changes that have been made. And then once letters have been sent, so we know we've emailed them, but if we're going to also post them, as far as I tell, you've told the system that letters have been issued, either been sent post room, sent by email, or you sent them by post. Now we're in the representation period. It's a statutory period, so it has to be an absolute minimum of 14 days. The system allows 14 plus 5 days, I think, maybe even up to 21 days from the moment you hit the button. You've got to allow that full period. After 21 days, the system will shut down and say no more representations, and will automatically flag to you that you're ready to issue the final license. You may need to process some representations in the meantime, so I'm just going to quickly show you that before we call it a day. So this is a copy of the draft license. Remember we saw that. I'm just going to log out of this for a second, and I'm going to log back in as Russell Moffat, the applicant. So here's me looking back in from a landlord's perspective. I've received this letter from you. I've got it. Thank you. Receive draft license. There's something about it I want to communicate with you about in that representation period. Now, in the letter, it will explain to them that they need to go to respond to a request. Bearing in mind, if you're a portfolio landlord, you've got multiple properties, you can go in and you can see all of your properties in a single place, and you can see what the status is of them, what the reference number is, etc., etc. You see, I've been doing lots of applications on this one. We're not going to do that. We're going to respond to a request. And again, just to reiterate, this is Russell Moffat, the applicant, not the officer. So from the letter I've got here, I'm just going to use this unique reference for the license reference and paste that in. That's going to find, hopefully, it's going to find flat 1 Arrow House. Okay, so we know we're talking about the right property. If there's a problem, there's a contact us here. Now we can confirm that's right. Now, because we've got more than one interested party, we need this 8-digit PIN, which is also on the letter. Again, just to show you, just pinch that text there, you can see. And this is going to determine that it's Russell Moffat as opposed to the bank. You remember we've got 2 interested parties. Mm-hmm. So hopefully, there we go. It's pulled the right person. So we can just confirm that is correct. Now this is the point where I can make a representation. Whatever it might be that I need. It should be 5 rooms, not 5 persons, not 4 persons. It'd be free text, so it's just could be anything. You ask them to make a declaration, submit. They get confirmation that they've made a representation. We can see we've got a rough period to be processed. So now I'm landlord, Russell Moffat, logging out, getting on with the rest of my life. I'm going to log back in now as Russell Moffat licensing processing. Here's the property we've been dealing with. Okay, we can see that an application is being, a representation is being received. Do you see that? Now, if we wanted to find, because this might be muddled in amongst dozens and dozens, hundreds of applications, hopefully, we can go down go find statuses. If you just wanted to think, right, got a lot of representations in the system, I can see those when we are in the caseload review or when we do the export. Just want to just look at representation, you can filter those. Okay, there's that property again we're dealing with. So we'll dive into that. Because we've got our representation received, we've got another action, another task to be completed. So we're able to review that task. You can see when it came in, from who, what my representation was. Now we get, at this point, we get a choice. Do we accept the representation? Do we partially accept it? Do we say it's not applicable, or do we not accept it? So I'm going to say I'm not accepting it. It doesn't make any sense. It's not relevant to the application. I can send an email to the customer, including the decision information above. Put in the date of the decision. So we'll use today. Save. And then we can say, in this case, deny representation. Okay, so now you process that representation. An email has been sent to the landlord saying that you don't accept that representation, and now, but we're still in the 14-day plus extra for maybe the bank to make a representation. Not they're likely to, so it won't automatically now go to draft a final license. We'll have to wait that period to end. So we're going to have a window where you're processing licenses, and you'll be like, well, I want to issue a final, but you won't be able to because the system will automatically not give you that option to process that task until that representation is properly finished. That statutory period you must give landlord. So it takes care of that process for you. So that is pretty much our end-to-end process from new application through to issuing a draft license and dealing with a representation.